Hey everybody, Rob Montgomery here from Climb. Today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Climb TMS system and kind of see what it's like from the user point of view, right? What does it take to actually learn with the Climb TMS system? Because, well, it's kind of what it's all about, right? So let's go ahead and take a jump here and we can take a look at what would happen if I logged in using my student account. So I logged into the system, you put in the username and password, and it immediately drops me here. And you can see over on the left side, it says My Learning. Underneath My Learning, I've got a few different options. I can do things like, authorize flight schools, or I can, purchase new courseware, or I can see all the history of all the training activities that I've ever done. But where we're going to spend most of our time is under My Courses. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the courses that we're working on and be able to make progress through that process, right? Most students, they're going to be working on one course at a time. It's going to be a private pilot course, an instrument course, a commercial course, something like that. I could see cases where you might get multiple courses working together. That would be fine. I also want to make sure you understand you're still going to have access to the courses that you've already completed. Because one of the things that we see is that training is a kind of a cyclical process where we have to go back and routinely revisit subjects so we keep them fresh in our head, because we never know when the world of aviation is going to throw us a pop quiz, right? But in this case, I'm only in one course. I'm in this commercial multi-engine airplane course. And when I go in and I say view course, it's going to pull me in to this My Course view. And normally where I'm going to land, there are a couple of exceptions, but almost always I'm going to land on the My To Do tab. And you can always get to the My To Do tab just by clicking on the My To Do tab over here. What the My To Do tab is it's a list of all the activities that I need to complete the course. Right? If you think about it, a training course is a to-do list. Now, most training courses say if we were going to do this first, this second, this third, we've deliberately gotten away from that. We use a nonlinear training model. And the reason is because not all students are the same, right? Some students are in a college environment. They're living, drinking, breathing, eating, sleeping, everything aviation. Their friends are in aviation, right? They don't have to take care of a house. They don't have a dog. They don't have kids. They don't have a job. They're just flying airplanes. Well, guess what? They're going to move along in a very different journey than maybe a mid-career person who has a job, has a house, has a family, has commitments outside of training, and is maybe, instead of flying 3-4 times a week, is maybe flying once or twice a month, right? And so we need to be respectful of that, and we need to have a system that's going to adapt to that. And the key component in adapting to that is through the instructor and through use of a nonlinear program that involves very detailed prerequisites. Okay. So as I scroll in here, what you're going to be able to see is you're going to see that we have a bunch of activities, and some of the activities are blue and some of the activities are yellow, right? The yellow activities are the activities that I have not yet met the prereqs for. The blues are the ones that I can go ahead and I can complete right now. Okay. And we have 4 different types of activities. So one of the activity types that we have is we have a knowledge activity. And a knowledge activity is really simply a case where you're going to go ahead and learn something. Right? Maybe it's a video, maybe it's a reading assignment, maybe it's, whatever it is that we can put into the system. The goal here is for you as the student to go ahead and do your learning. And I always used to tell people, teach isn't really a verb, because no matter how good of a teacher I am, I can't learn it for you. And so this is where, as a student, you go in there and you actually learn the materials, right? Another activity type that we have is a quiz. Right? And a quiz is really simple. You open up the quiz, you go in there, and you're going to answer some questions. And they might be multiple choice answers, at which point we can grade them right then and there, because it's pretty easy to do with a computer. It might be a short answer question, right? And what we can do is we can say, hey, that short answer question is going to have to get graded from your instructor, but they don't have to be with you to do it. They can just pop it up and grade the quiz pretty quickly, right? And so what happens is what we're doing is we're doing that first level, kind of what I call the surface level evaluation of your knowledge. Did you, generally speaking, understand the concept, right? And then what we do is we go into what we call flight activities, right? And honestly, I really shouldn't have called them flight activities. We should have called them training activities, and that's probably a change that's going to come out in the system here at some point. Because a training activity is a time where you're going to sit in front of an instructor and you're going to have a conversation with that instructor, and that instructor is essentially going to evaluate you. And it's, by the way, it can be a conversation. It could also be flight. Right? If you go out and do steep turns, the instructor is going to evaluate you based on, are you holding the right bank angle? Are you maintaining your altitude? Are you maintaining your airspeed? Are you rolling out on heading? Right? These are the things that they're going to evaluate you on. But if it's a conversation, maybe, did you really understand chapter 2 in the book? And let's talk about chapter 2, not from I'm going to ask you questions about chapter 2 and you answer them, but from a conversation. Maybe it's a scenario-based discussion, or maybe it's what we're doing is we're making the instructor happy that when push comes to shove, you're going to behave in the way that's going to be safe and legal and comfortable for your, not scaring passengers, and doing the right things as a pilot. Okay. And then the last activity we have isn't really a training activity type at all. What it is it's what we call an instructor action. And the job of an instructor action is that it's going to go ahead and it's going to be the administrative things that instructors have to do. So maybe it's a TSA compliance, right? So we may have an instructor action coming up where we have to redo your TSA compliance. Well, if we're going to put it in it's actually going to show up in your homework, because what we want to make sure is that you're going to bring in the documentation that we need so that we can, complete that TSA compliance, so that we can then go ahead and keep the flight training going. Right. And we do that for that. We do that for endorsements. We do that for, sometimes we're unlocking parts of the course for the student. There's a wide variety of ways in which we can use instructor actions to kind of keep things going in the right way, but maintain the flexibility that we actually need. Right. On the page itself, so if we take a look at this page, right, the page kind of is in two parts. Up top is the homework. This is not an automatically generated list. This is a list that was created with some assistance by your instructor. Right. And so what your instructor is basically saying is, here's the stuff I want to do on the next flight. Here's the homework that goes towards getting you ready to do that. And that may involve reading assignments. That may involve watching videos. That may involve completing quizzes. That may involve, your instructor has complete control over what goes in this list within reason, right? They can't give you 1,000 homework assignments and say, I'm just due in 2 days. We also make sure that you can get, you will not necessarily be able to complete everything on the list, because if it's a flight activity or an instructor action, obviously you can't complete those. And even a quiz would require some instructor actions. But what you're not going to do is you're not going to be blocked because, that flight activity isn't going to be a prerequisite for another knowledge activity, right? We try to keep it reasonable and completable in terms of what happens in homework. And then down below, what we see is hey, here I have a list of all the activities in the course. Right? We try to put them into a relatively intelligent form. We try to keep you on kind of thought strings where if you start looking at, aircraft systems, we're going to guide you kind of through all of the aircraft systems, because there are certain activities that really build upon other activities, and we identify them through the course development process. Okay. Within this, though, as I mentioned, right, blues are things that I can do right now. Yellows are things that I don't meet the prerequisites for. And so if I come along here and look at my homework, you're going to notice that I have here this knowledge activity that says I want to complete it. So I'll go ahead and click on that knowledge activity, right? And what it's going to do is it's going to pull me into the knowledge activity write-up, where I have a quick description of what it is that we're going to be doing. If I have resources, those resources are going to appear down here. Now, I stress resources. So in this case, we have one resource. It's a reading assignment. Right? So if I'm going to go ahead and open it up, I'm going to read the chapter or read the section, and life is good. But it could also be, there could also be a video. Maybe there's going to be a companion video that goes with the chapter. Maybe there might be a couple of videos. Maybe you're going to decide, do you like the way Rob speaks, or do you like the way Sue speaks, or something like that. There could be, aircraft demonstrations, and maybe we show a demonstration for a Skyhawk, a demonstration for a Cherokee, a demonstration for an RV. I don't know, right? The idea is that from the course developer point of view, we can put many, many things here. And for me to view a resource, all I've got to do is go ahead and click on it. It's going to go ahead and pop right up. We can take a little view, right? Once we viewed it, now you can see when you viewed the document. Once I view it, I also get this little button pops up. And all I have to do is view one resource to get the button to pop up. But what the button says is you, as the student, are certifying that you have read, studied, and understood the content that we're talking about, right? And once you're happy with that, you go ahead and click on the button, right? It pops up. It gives you a little, phraseology that says, we're kind of like almost like we're signing a little contract here, and you're going to go ahead and put in your PIN. And the PIN does two things. One is, well, three things really. One is it makes sure that we know who you are, right? That you haven't like outsourced your course completion to somebody else. Number two is you're kind of electronically signing and saying that, this is what I'm doing. And number three is, and this is kind of the most important, is this is what makes us part of what makes us Part 141 compliant, right? So if you're at a Part 141 flight school, we're actually required to do that stuff. So I go ahead and mark it complete. That activity is now fallen out of my homework list. And one of the other, remember we had 6 items before, now we're down to 5. One of those other knowledge items just bubbled up inside of the system, right? And so that's the process that we're going to use. Wash, rinse, repeat as we go through this is you open up an activity, you complete the activity, you close the activity, and then what's going to happen is that activity is going to fall in over here on the completed activity side. The completed activity side is simply a list of all the activities that you're theoretically done with, right? In theory, you will never have to do these activities again. In practice, that may not always be the case. And the reason is some of the activities we have are going to go ahead and expire, right? And when something expires, it just goes back into the to-do list. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to not just build, say, yes, I did stalls with the student. Yes, I did whatever. We need to make sure that when you go for that flight test, and hopefully beyond that flight test, that you're actually competent in that maneuver. And so we make sure that you repeat the maneuvers every now and again. We may make sure you repeat, if there are knowledge areas that we're not building upon, we may force you to go back and recheck knowledge. We usually do that through a quiz, not through a flight activity. But there are definitely tools that we have to make sure that we're constantly going back and retouching things, because it's very easy in aviation to lose a lot of stuff due to disuse, right? Other things that we have over here, we have flights. Right? So here's where we're going to actually record the flights that we have. So your instructor is the one who's actually going to create the flights. And those flights are going to contain, if I look at this, we have a flight that's configured. I go ahead and click on view details. Here's a list of all the activities that my instructor wants to do on this flight, right? They want to do rejected takeoffs, crosswind landings with differential power, no flap landings, 2-engine operative free flight, 2-engine operative holding patterns, and so on and so forth. And what we can do is we can drill into it. And into each one of these activities, we can kind of get an idea of what is the, what is expected. So we have a little briefing slide that is going to probably use during the pre-flight briefing for discussion purposes. I have some student guidance, which is some text that's kind of explaining to me what it is that's expected of me as the student. I'm going to have the completion standards. If I want to be graded as proficient on this maneuver, these are the standards that I need to meet, right? And then we also put in there some tips and tricks. What those tips and tricks are showing you is kind of some things that we've noticed over time that, if you're teaching a student how to land, we try to tell them, hey, look at the trees at the end of the runway. Don't be looking at the stripe right in front of you, because otherwise you're going to have a really firm and awkward arrival, right? Your instructor is going to have access to this as well. They also have the ability to grade and mark and comment and do a whole lot more. They have access to it here. They also have access. You may see them using an iPad or an Android device in the right seat of the aircraft. They can actually mark it on an offline app, and then when it resyncs with the internet, it'll upload all the data to this thing, right? And then the last 2 things that we have is we have some course progress, right? And we have reports. So the course progress is going to be just a series of displays that kind of show how you're progressing through the system. It's this experience one. This, to my mind, is a really important one, because what we're doing is we're making sure that you meet the Part 61 and the Part 141 requirements, or I should say Part 61 or Part 141 requirements as you go through the training program. So we can just look at a graph and say, yep, they've got their nighttime. Yep, they've got their ground instruction. Ooh, we got to do that long cross country, right? So that's a big help for the instructors right there. And then the other thing we have is a couple of reports. So one report, and these are both kick out as basically Excel files. The one on the left here, the flight activity heat map, is going to show you kind of how are you progressing. And so we track, we don't do it for every flight activity, but we track a lot of the flight activities, and we can kind of say, hey, the first time you did stalls, you got a 2, right? By the 4th time, you were getting 4s. By the 6th time, you were getting 5s, right? And so we can see that you're progressing through the system, see that you're making progress. If we start seeing that a lot of students are regressing, or you see that when you fly with a different instructor, you get like you were getting 5s with this instructor, and then you go to that other instructor and you're getting 3s, that can be a clue that maybe something's not quite right within the flight school, or could show that you were nervous, or right. But what we're looking for is we're looking for telltale signs that say, yeah, we're having success, or are we do we need to make a change somewhere so that we can get you back on the pathway to success, right? And then the other one is the course summary report. And this is kind of a fun one. So the FAA is really becoming a little bit more persnickety with their designated pilot examiners, the DPEs being the people who do your check ride at the end of the course. And so what's happening is that DPEs are then getting a little bit more persnickety with us. And what they want to see now a lot of them anyways, is they're asking to see evidence that if you look in part 61 or you look in part 141, there's a list of everything that you need to do from a ground school side and a flight school side. And it's kind of a generic list. It's pretty broad brushed, right? But they want to see evidence that I, as an instructor, have taught you every single item in those lists, right? And so what we do is we take the activities, we map the activities to those regulations. And so now when you pull up the course summary report, we can say, oh, you want to see if I, did 61 dot whatever, right? Well, I did it on this date, this date, this date, this date, this date, this date. And what it does is it makes sure that your designated pilot examiner is happy. So hopefully you kind of see all this stuff that we have in here. It's a pretty simple interface. I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping it pretty easy, but you can see there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I would be really excited to have you as a student. If you're an instructor, I'd be really excited to have you as an instructor. And if you're a flight school, I'd really love to talk to you a little bit, because there's a great way for you guys to make a little bit of money selling climb courses. Reach out to us. We've got a contact form on the website. Go ahead and jump right into that contact form. Send us your info. We'll reach right out to you. And we'd love to see you guys. Thanks. Have a great day.